Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to completely demystify one of the absolute most powerful forces in finance, compound interest. We're going to explore 5 real-world tales that prove you really don't need a massive fortune, some huge salary, or a fancy Wall Street background to build lasting financial security. The secret to wealth isn't always about making big, risky bets, you know? Actually, more often than not, it's simply about understanding how time and patience can literally do the heavy lifting for you. To really grasp this concept, we have to start with what sounds like a ridiculous question. What if a single grain of rice could bankrupt an entire kingdom? Well, we're starting with the ancient legend of King Armon and the dangerously wise inventor Ravi. This classic story is just the perfect hook into our first crucial lesson, because honestly, it tricks our human brains. We are simply not wired to instinctively understand just how fast things can multiply. Section 1. The magic of exponential growth. Okay, so to see how this works, let's picture a simple everyday object, a standard chessboard. The legend goes that the inventor Ravi presented a beautiful game of chess to King Armon. The king was so incredibly thrilled that he offered Ravi literally any reward he wanted. And Ravi's request? It seemed almost insultingly humble. He asked for simply 1 grain of rice on the first square of the chessboard, then 2 grains on the second square, 4 grains on the third. He just wanted the king to keep doubling the amount of rice on each subsequent square until the board was full. So 1 grain on the first square, 2 on the second, 4 on the third. It starts off looking deceptively slow. The king laughed and agreed, thinking he'd only owe a handful of rice. But, well, the royal treasurers soon realized they had a massive problem on their hands. And this brilliantly illustrates the terrifying yet wonderful power of exponential growth. Because by the time they reached the end of that 64-square chessboard, the king owed Ravi over 18 quintillion grains of rice. To put that into perspective, that is enough rice to cover the entire surface of the earth. The kingdom was utterly bankrupted by a single grain that just kept doubling. The lesson here: never, ever underestimate the power of small beginnings when they are subjected to exponential growth. In finance, we call this compounding. It starts quietly, but man, it accelerates into an absolute avalanche. Moving on to Section 2, time, your greatest advantage. Time is the essential fuel that makes that compounding avalanche possible. Consider the story of 2 twin brothers, Ali and Amir. They grew up in the exact same house, they had the same father giving them financial advice, and they even went on to earn very similar incomes in their respective careers. But they made completely different psychological decisions on exactly when to begin their investing journey. Ali actually takes his father's advice and starts investing regularly right at age 21. Amir, on the other hand, wants to enjoy his money now. He figures he has plenty of time, so he delays and waits all the way until age 35 to start investing. Now, fast forward to retirement, and notice the massive gap in their final wealth. When they both reach retirement age, Ali has accumulated significantly more wealth than Amir. And here is the real kicker. Amir actually had to put way more of his own physical money into his accounts later in life just to try and catch up, but he still fell way short. Why? Simply because Ali's money had 14 extra years to double and double and double again. Time is without a doubt one of the greatest, most unfair advantages an investor can possibly have. We see the exact same lesson play out in our next story, featuring Mrs. Fatima, who was a dedicated schoolteacher. The takeaway here is profound. Starting early is often far more important than investing large amounts of money later in life. Mrs. Fatima didn't have a high-paying corporate job, but what she did have was foresight. Years later, her former student Omar was absolutely stunned when he found out about her surprisingly massive retirement portfolio. Despite being on a modest teacher's salary and making very small out-of-pocket contributions her whole life, her final portfolio was unexpectedly massive. Her money grew exponentially simply because she started early in her career. She let the calendar do all the heavy lifting that her paycheck couldn't do. The length of time your money is invested matters so much more than the size of your initial investment. Section 3. The power of consistency. Let me tell you about Hassan. Hassan was a hard-working farmer working day in and day out alongside his wife Amina. For their first decade together, despite their grueling labor, they were seriously struggling financially. Every single ruby they made went right back out the door, just to survive. But then, Hassan met Mr. Kareem, a retired banker. Mr. Kareem gave Hassan a surprisingly simple psychological rule: do not spend every ruby. Instead, consistently invest a small amount of every single harvest. It didn't matter if the harvest was incredibly bountiful or somewhat lean, a small portion simply had to be invested. By decade 3, that unyielding consistency entirely transformed their lives, eventually achieving long-term family wealth. Hassan's transformation perfectly defines the core mechanism of compound interest in action. Think of it as a snowball effect, where you earn interest on your original investment plus all the interest it has already accumulated. You put in a small scoop of snow. That's your consistent investment from the harvest. You roll it down the hill, and it gathers more snow. That's the interest. But then that new, bigger snowball keeps rolling and gathers even more snow. You're literally earning money on your money's money. It is a beautiful cycle, but it absolutely requires you to consistently pack that first snowball. Section 4. Reinvesting for your future. So to keep that snowball rolling and growing faster, we have to look at the shopkeeper's secret to financial security. We can see a really stark contrast between two neighbors here. On one side, we have grocery shop owner Ahmed. Ahmed consistently sets aside a portion of his monthly profits, and crucially, he reinvests his returns. He doesn't touch the growth. He puts it right back to work. On the other side, we have his neighbor Bilal. Now, Bilal spends every single extra rupee he makes. If Bilal has a good month, Bilal buys a new gadget or takes a lavish trip. The result? Years later, Ahmed easily pays for his daughter Sarah's education and retires securely, while Bilal is still working day-to-day just to get by. The crucial point for Ahmed was his profit allocation. By skimming a portion off the top, taking just 20% and strictly reinvesting it, while living on the other 80%, Ahmed built a true financial fortress. He didn't interrupt the compounding process. Because if you pull your interest out to spend it, you are breaking the chessboard. You are stopping the doubling. Ahmed let it ride, and it completely funded his daughter's education and his own freedom.
And finally, Section 5, Planting Your Financial Seed.
Bringing all these incredible fables together, I want you to really absorb this one lesson. Small, consistent investments combined with patience can create long-term wealth. It is the ultimate great equalizer. The farmer, the teacher, the shopkeeper, none of them had millions of dollars to start with. This beautiful lesson proves once and for all that you do not need a massive salary to succeed. You just need the discipline of the farmer, the foresight of the teacher, the reinvesting habits of the shopkeeper, and above all, the patience to let the chessboard do its mathematical magic over time. We've seen how a single grain of rice can bankrupt a king. We've seen how starting early put one tween miles ahead of the other. We've seen how a modest teacher completely out-earned expectations, and how consistency saved a struggling farmer. Armed with the secret of the chessboard, the twins, the teacher, the farmer, and the shopkeeper, the only question left to answer is this: what small seed are you going to plant today to start compounding your own future?